afternoon, all. Welcome to the frequently asked and misunderstood questions about diabetes. Quick introduction. My name is Beth. I'm a dietitian diabetes educator with Gem Care. So, we're going to start with just, kind of looking at some simple, ideas here. When it comes to diabetes, there just seems to be a lot of misunderstanding. So we're going to, try to sort through a few of those and, see if we can solve some of those myths there. So when it comes to diabetes, whether it's type 1 or type 2, there's no shortage of advice out there. So we're going to, not all of it's accurate. From diet and exercise to medications, daily routines, myths and misconceptions about managing diabetes can be confusing and frustrating. So we're going to, just kind of take a look at some of the things to think about here. All right, I'm going to try to forward my screen here, which isn't cooperating with here. So we're going to look at, myth number one. Diabetes is caused by eating too much sugar. That not true. There's, when we look at the two kinds of diabetes, type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune condition. It's not caused by diet or lifestyle. It's caused by, the body becoming the pancreas deciding it doesn't want to work anymore and attack on the pancreas. So, type 2 diabetes develops often when the body becomes resistant to insulin or doesn't produce enough. It can be influenced by genetics, weight, physical activity, and other factors, but not at all from eating just sugar. So yes, can be a contributor, but it definitely isn't the cause. When limiting or added sugar is while limiting added sugar is part of a healthy diet, it doesn't mean it's not the cause of diabetes, and it doesn't mean you can never have sugar. Of course, it's not the healthiest part, but it can be worked in. So just, kind of taking away, hopefully understanding that removes some of the guilt that you caused diabetes, or, it's what you ate or, what you drank that caused the diabetes, because there are other pieces that contribute there. The second, kind of myth sometimes that surrounds diabetes is that people with diabetes cannot eat carbs and they are the enemy. So, often in reality, carbs are what your body need for fuel. So they're the body's main source of energy. Carbohydrates are the most efficient form of energy, for your system. So not having them can actually be hard on your body. So can we limit them? Do we often have too many of them? Yes, but not that you can't have them at all. So you actually need a few. The key is learning of which carbs work best for you and how to balance them. Things like whole grains, beans, fruits, vegetables, they all provide fiber. So, fiber, vitamins, minerals, things that we need to function on a daily basis. So the key is learning which carbs work best for you and how to balance them. There's no one size fits all rule. The goal isn't to cut out the carbs, it's to understand different foods, how they affect your blood sugar, and how to make adjustments to fit your lifestyle. Kind of think about sometimes the third kind of myth that can come to mind here. That exercise, you can't exercise if you have diabetes. Some worry that exercise isn't safe. Your blood sugars will go up and down too quickly, but definitely a misunderstanding. Regular movement is one of the best tools for managing both blood sugar and health in general. So most of, we're made to move. So finding a way to exercise and keep movement is part of your day, so important. Just remember that exercise helps your body use insulin more effectively, helps to lower stress, helps to increase energy. So whether you're walking, swimming, dancing, gardening, it all counts as exercise. So we want to make sure that we learn how to work that in. The key is monitoring your blood sugar before and after you exercise, staying hydrated, keeping some quick acting carb sources available if your blood sugar were to drop. We find that to be a problem most often with people that are on insulin or a medication, an oral medication that lowers the blood sugar without regard to food. So something like a sulfonylurea, like glyburide, glipizide, I like to call them the IZDE medications there. So if you're on one of these, your blood sugar goes down too quickly, that's where we need these fast-acting carbs. So, glucose tabs can work well there. Sometimes a candy or hardtack candies, such as like peppermints or the butterscotch discs that are just pure sugar. Skittles can work well there. With this is the month of Halloween, so sometimes some of the Halloween candies, like the little gummy bears and things, can work well. So it's just knowing how many to have to just bring that blood sugar up slightly so that you can kind of continue to exercise at a healthy pace there. Myth number 4 that sometimes we hear about, I feel fine, my diabetes must be in control. So we can't always take this kind of ignorance is bliss attitude. That's why we want to check the blood sugar. So just because you feel okay doesn't mean that the blood sugar is under control. So blood sugar's level can stay high without any other obvious symptoms. So some people with blood sugars that are high, they feel them. They're very thirsty all the time. They're very tired. I like to think about it as it's kind of like moving sludge through your body when your blood sugars are high. So some people are fortunate, or we can call it unfortunate, not to feel those side effects, and they can kind of continue and function absolutely normally without knowing that their blood sugars are high. So that's why we want to test. We can do that with a glucometer and a test strip. We have continuous glucose monitoring. We have those at least quarterly checks with an A1C, which gives us an average of your blood sugar over 3 months. So don't skip those pieces. Even if you feel well, you still want to check in on the blood sugars. If your blood sugar, your A1C is good, your numbers are very well controlled, then often you can kind of space between that testing a little bit more, but don't let it go by the wayside. Always make sure that you're testing your blood sugars on a regular basis. Um, that if those numbers continue to run high, that's where we kind of hit those where it damages the body. We have those microvascular damaging nerves, damaging kidneys, damaging vision, which it can be slow little bursts. So like over time, that's where we before we notice the damage has already been done. So what we want to do is prevent the damage. That's why the regular monitoring can be so important there. If you're taking medications, you have failed. Um, couldn't be farther from true. I mean, I always, kind of use that example of if you have high blood pressure and you're taking blood pressure medication, you wouldn't stop taking the blood pressure medication just because your blood pressure is well controlled. When you stop taking it, then it, kind of goes back up again. Same thing with your blood sugar. Sometimes we need that little bit of extra assistance to make sure that the blood sugars are doing well, so to help them along. So don't think of medication as a failure. Many people take medications for lots of different things. Diabetes is progressive. What your body needs can change over time. You can be doing very well for a while, and then all of a sudden the blood sugars start to increase. Maybe not no doing on your own. Your weight can be healthy, your activity can be healthy, your diet can be healthy, but you can still have some mechanical malfunctions with the body. And that's where like I said, the medication will help you keep those numbers in control. So the goal isn't to avoid medication, it's to maintain healthy blood sugar and prevent complications. And often this means combining medication with the healthy habits that you may have already established. And sometimes it's hard to be consistent with healthy habits. Life can get in the way, so that medication can kind of give us a little extra guidance there to prevent any damage from happening. Myth number 6. If there's a cure, a quick fix or a cure. So, especially with social media out there, you're going to see lots of things. So just remember, with so many ads and posts online, every social media platform, Facebook, Instagram, everything else that's out there, they promise to cure diabetes. You know, can we typically we don't think about it as curing. We think about keeping it like in a remission state or well controlled. Can supplements be helpful? Absolutely. They can be part of your treatment, but, be mindful. Some of them are very expensive. Some of them have no guided resources or research to show that they work well for you. So, like with everything, how does it work? Is it, following, don't think of that quick fix, that you've got to put in the work. You've got to eat healthy. You've got to move more. You've got to take your medications. You've got to test your blood sugar, that a supplement isn't necessarily going to cure all that for you. So, progressive, it looks different for everybody, but just make sure that, there are no cures at this point in time. We can only put the diabetes in a remissive state. All that, kind of all that being said, the CoreVantage program, we have Edwards Healthcare Services that helps us get the supplies to you to, make sure that your insurance is covering everything and, things are delivered. You have what you need to help manage your blood sugars. We also have the support of some quarterly nutrition coaching, just some ideas. I always like to tell my members that I work with is like, we can work as a team. We can brainstorm. Most people have a medical support team that is there to help them, on a daily basis with their medications. Maybe they're seeing a dietitian in person to help them with their meal planning piece. But we can always, just do a little bit extra, just try to help you think of some ideas to help you manage, maybe provide you with some meal plans, some meal ideas, some hints for taking your medications, some hints for checking your blood sugars. So do take advantage of the support for the whole you when it comes to, working with Edwards Healthcare Services here. Just, kind of some key takeaways. Don't, myths can make diabetes very hard to manage. That everybody eats a little bit different. We have some cultural pieces there. So no foods are off limits all the time. Do we have to do things a little bit differently? Absolutely, when it comes to the diabetes management. But let's, kind of work together and help manage and make your life feel as normal as possible for you there. Knowledge and consistency are powerful tools. Things change. There are new diabetes medications, there are new treatment approaches, nutrition changes. Kind of what we think worked at one point in time may not always work as readily now. So just, realize that we can always talk about the new tools that are out there. Focus on what's true, not trendy. Especially from a nutrition standpoint, trends can happen. We have all lived through low fat, low carb, keto, modified keto. There's just lots of things out there. Sometimes a just more holistic approach works better, something that's sustainable over time. And just remember that you're not alone. There's credible help out there. Just I want to, thank you for joining today, or if you're coming back later on and listening to this webinar, just a few more resources for you. We have the Ask the RD. You can email your question in. We will get back to you with an answer. You can always reach out to Edwards Healthcare Services directly. You can give us a call. You can take advantage of the CoreVantage program, which is the quarterly call with the nutritionist or the dietitian. We're always happy to help you kind of find your way and provide some additional resources for you. If anybody does have any questions, there is the chat available that you can, pose your questions in there. I'm happy to give you a little bit of feedback. I'm also including here just some references that I think are so helpful to, I think diabetes.org is a great website to give yourself, just some additional information. They have great meal planning resources. They, have some healthy lifestyle ideas to help keep you in tune there. Then, of course, all the manufacturer websites can tell you, you can learn about the products themselves, how to use them more efficiently. I think like diet, like medications, products aren't a one size fit all. It's, we have to find the right product that works for you. So just kind of keep the resource piece in mind. And then I'm going to go back to the, just so you have the thank you screen here. Just a couple questions that I see in the chat that I'm going to, just kind of give a quick answer to here. First one is, can I eat sugar if I have diabetes? And of course, the answer is yes, in moderation and balance. Small amounts can fit in. Often we want to combine it. We want to compare it with some protein, some fiber, some healthy fats. Uh, Another question here is type 2 diabetes reversible? In some cases, blood sugars can be brought back to a healthy range. In most cases, actually, we can always get the numbers back into a healthy range with lifestyle changes, weight loss, medication. It is a remission, not a cure necessarily. Ongoing management is always important there. So just remember, diabetes can be progressive. What works today may not work in a year, may not work in 5 years. So we just want to modify that treatment plan. We don't, have to always change it completely, but sometimes it does need a little bit of modification. Last question here. Do people with type 1 and type 2 diabetes need different diets? Principles of eating can be a little bit different. With type 1 diabetes, we are always, the body is not producing insulin or producing enough insulin. So we are giving insulin. Remember, insulin is that key that opens the cell that lets the glucose or the sugar in to create energy. So we have to give the right amount to keep the blood sugars in a good spot. So that is the key with type 1. So the more carbohydrates you eat, sometimes the more insulin you need. We can deliver that insulin via injections or via an insulin pump, and we have, a couple other patch pump things kind of available that can help you there. Type 2 diabetes, often there's no insulin involved. The body's already producing insulin, just not using it effectively there. So we can handle the carbohydrate in the diet a little bit differently there. Sometimes a little bit lower carb does well for some, not for everybody. So the principles are the same, but how it's handled between type 1 and type 2 diabetes can be a little bit different. I don't see any other questions in the chat, so do please take advantage of the Ask the RD. Reach out if you do have any additional questions, and we will be happy to get back to you. Thank you for your time today. Much appreciated.